I'm Steve Wilkerson, and I'm with Jim Saunders, Executive Editor of the News Service of Florida. Jim, state law says that guns can be banned on school campuses, but the University of North Florida took it a step further and said, well, not only are they banned on campuses, you can't stow them in your cars, but a student at the University of North Florida appealed that rule to the First District Court of Appeals here in Tallahassee. What happened?
Well, the First District Court of Appeal issued a ruling last week that basically said that UNF overstepped its authority and that it didn't have the legal right to be able to prevent students from keeping guns in their cars. It was a very divided court. There was opinions going all different directions, but it's an interesting opinion about how far state law really goes in governing gun control types of issues in the state.
Well, what happens next?
Well, I don't know whether there's going to be an appeal by the state. We're not sure about that yet. But essentially they've said that universities cannot go beyond what state law says. There is an exemption in this law for school districts that they can ban guns being stowed in cars. But and UNF tried to use that as their position in this case. But the court said that state law doesn't allow universities that flexibility to do it.
Interesting. Well, on another gun issue, bills have been filed in both the House and Senate to expand the Stand Your Ground law, can you believe it, to allow someone to fire a warning shot. This legislation arose out of a specific incident in Jacksonville. Tell us first of all about the incident, and then we'll get into kind of what the politics are and the policy is.
This case has been a really big deal over in Jacksonville, and there's a woman named Marissa Alexander who was in a domestic dispute with her husband, and she got a gun and fired a shot into the wall, I believe is what it was. She was charged under what's known as the 1020 life law in Florida. It's a mandatory minimum sentencing law. She didn't shoot anybody, but she did shoot the wall, and she was sentenced to 20 years in prison.
And this was a warning shot, according to her, correct?
According to her. I mean, there's a lot of dispute about this case. There's a lot of, if you talk, the state attorney over there, has a different account of that. So she was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Now, there's been an appeal, and that the case is back to the circuit court level. So, in the end, it's not really clear how it's going to come out. But she was initially sentenced to 20 years. So that has got a lot of publicity, and there's bills filed to essentially allow warning shots, and so someone would not be prosecuted similarly on that.
Where are some of the different people lining up on this? For example, Marion Hammer, the National Rifle Association, where are they on this?
The NRA appears to be pretty supportive of this proposal. We had a story last week, which is pretty interesting, is that the public defenders have come out in support of it. They think some people are being charged with crimes that they shouldn't be when they're essentially trying to defend themselves. The prosecutors have been very critical of Stand Your Ground over time. They, partly because they argue that Stand Your Ground can lead to essentially criminals using it as a defense in cases. The sheriffs also they have not taken a position, as far as I know, on this bill at this time. But it's going to be very closely watched. Florida has become sort of a national focal point on these Stand Your Ground laws. I believe it was the first state to have a Stand Your Ground law, and those have spread to other states. And after the George Zimmerman case down in Sanford, which drew a lot of attention, ultimately that wasn't decided purely as a Stand Your Ground case, but it's drawn a lot of attention. So when this issue about the warning shots comes up in the legislature, it's going to be getting a lot of attention.
Who would have believed we'd be here before the 2014 session talking about expanding the scope of Stand Your Ground?
Well, the legislature and the governor's office have made clear they do not want to do anything to get rid of stand your ground. The Republican leaders of the legislature, as well as the governor's office, have made that clear. But I'm not sure we did expect any sort of expansion or new ways of implementing it, if you will.
Thank you, Jim. For more news about Florida politics and government, visit the Advances section of our website.